I'm not very good at focusing, and I think lots of founders on and businesses on. And I with this, we're trying to potentially do a production business, consultancy, podcast, sponsorship. There's like 10 different things we could do. What's your sort of either framework or process to say, right, this is our sort of buffet of options to grow. We're going to go for these two delectable delights.
Well, first of all, you've got to decide that's it and stick with it. So first of all, you've got to work out what it is you're going to focus on and get it right, because there are lots of choices and not everyone gets it right. So work out in the right, intelligently, what it is that matters. So there are lots of things you could do which are worthwhile in their own right and they seem good, but some are essential to success, and you can achieve success sometimes without some of them. So if you can get where you want to get without doing some of those, don't do those. Just do the ones that are necessary and essential to your overall goal. So it does start with a very clear focus on what you're trying to achieve. And I often start my leadership meetings with the phrase, which is, we're only here to do one thing, to make the business more valuable. Because there are a million things you can get caught up in as to what really matters in business and what our role truly is. And without going down there's various rabbit holes you can end up in if you're not careful. But if you remember, if people sit around the table and say, I don't think we are here just to do one thing to make this business more valuable. I think we have many other roles in life. Well, they need to go and do that then, because that's not what we're doing around this table. If you're working with me and we've acquired one of these businesses, I don't own the business. We are executives working on behalf of the shareholders, and all they want is us to make the company more valuable. So that's what we have to do, not get confused by many other things. So that's
a real art, though, and that's like because I think the other thing is distractions sort of masquerade as opportunities, and it's like, oh yeah, and it's like, but that's what I'm trying to get into is how your brain. And I think the first way of doing this is like, what is the end goal?
Yeah.
Like, how do you work out? Like, I know there's the 80-20 rule. I think Jack mentioned at Dash about when you came in and they were trying to do the big bottles of water, and you're like, again, does that grow the business? Like, what are these? Yeah. How do you get into saying this is what we're trying to do? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think a lot of it does come down to discipline, in that you might have the kind of brain that flits around and you can cope with lots of interesting things all at once. In fact, you like that. But intellectually, you're smart enough to know that what success is not about doing 27 things. It's about doing 2 or 3 things really, really well. So if you've got a smart team of people, intellectually, they'd know that. So they just need help in doing what they know is right. So the way to do that, so if I was working with you, I'd say, well, if you were to write now, in order, the top 10 things you think you could do in the next year, which would make the business more valuable, and then you did the exercise, I say, you're absolutely sure they're in priority order? Yeah, I've gone through it and they are. Well, I'd just tear off the bottom 7, give you back the 3 and say, right, those are the things you now need to spend all your time on. And then within a week, I'd ask you to come back and say, you can bring your diary with you. And then you put the diary for the week there and the 3 things there, and then say, now put a tick against everything you're doing in the next week that relates to those 3 things.
Wow.
And if there's nothing, if it isn't 100% of those things, or let's give you 90% of those things, then you're not getting it. And you'd find, I'm not going to get you, but
go for
you'd find, I'll do it to myself. So let's say I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
If there were 3 things that I had to do to make the business more successful, and my diary was spent, 50% of my diary was doing something else, then I've got the wrong business plan. I'm spending my time on the wrong things, because you need to spend your time on those 3 things, because those are the only 3 things that matter. We've already intellectually established that.
Yes.
But people are, what could be more interesting than you saying to me, do you know, I've just come back from holiday in Portugal, and there's a massive opportunity there, and I think I should go back and do this. Oh, that's very exciting and fun. Of course you want to do that, but we're not doing it. Because it's not in your 3 things.
Yes, I love that.
So that's one of the ways of doing it.
And then picking the 3 things out of that.
Well, you've already done that, because I asked you.
How would you do that yourself? So with Sam Pierre, right? I love this as an example. It's like those 3 things. There's probably a whole list of different things you could do, but like, how did you get set on the 3, and what were the 3?
Well, Sam Pierre already was quite big. It was over 100 million when I got involved, so it was big, and it made a decent amount of money, so it's quite profitable. But But the problem with it was that it wasn't a wholly branded business.
Wholly branded as in
It was
like...
mostly private label.
Okay, oh, sorry, yeah.
So the brand didn't make up most of the revenue. And so if we're going to maximize the value of Saint Pierre, the key was to make the brand very successful and well known. And I don't know if you can pick up the...
Yeah, it will be behind
There's the
you,
packaging
don't you worry,
behind
yeah.
me.
Here's what we made earlier.
So that branding there, that's not the branding we had when I arrived. The Saint Pierre name was written in a script, very attractive script, but it couldn't actually read Saint Pierre. So we were I was with Perry in Los Angeles in a supermarket, and we'd gone over there to the Natural Food Show at Expo West, and he went up to the chap loading the shelves up with this orange packaging, and he said, "You seem to be busy doing this with this brioche. You know that comes from France." I go, "Yeah, it comes from France." He said, "And what do you know the name of that brand?" And he said, "Well, no, I don't. We just call it the orange one." And so Perry came back to me and said, "I told you that bloody packaging was awful. They can't read the name. They call it the orange one." So, well, that's no good. No one knows a brand name. So Perry redesigned all the packaging. So my start point on brand recognition is always packaging. And so we changed the packaging so you could read. It was called Saint Pierre. And then we went from there. We had a brilliant marketing director at Saint Pierre who'd come in from the Happy Egg Company. And she created some brilliant online ads and social media stuff. And we did very good PR and built the brand up from there. But that was the one thing I had to sort out in that business. A lot of that business was already good. It was big, it was profitable. It had a US business, but it wasn't a US branded business, so not to the extent we wanted.
Everything to that, how do I get value for the shareholders? How do I get it?
It was about the brand.
Holy brand.
Yeah, because if you got a private label business and you turn over 100 million and you make 10, well, it's changed slightly, but you used to get sort of 8 times EBITDA. So your £100 million business worth 80 million. If you've got a branded business and it's 100 million and it's all brand, you can get 15 times EBITDA for a really cool brand. So that's 150 million. So by going from private label to brand, 80 to 150, it's almost twice as valuable.
Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your e-com and accounting software. It's helped Islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is. Don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel, and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.